So, welcome to ELT in Chile, a podcast about teaching English in Chile. In this space, I talk to teachers, teacher trainers, and experts who would like to share their experiences and expertise regarding English language teaching, and also, let's say, linguistics in any area that deals with language, not only in Chile, but also around the world. In this episode, I'll be talking to Professor Fanny Meunier. So, Fanny is a full professor of English language linguistics and didactics at UC Leuven in Belgium. She's the current president of the Research Institute for Language and Communication. She has been the member of the Center for English Corpus Linguistics for 30 years. And that's, as you can see, that's going to be the topic of conversation. And its director from 2017 to 2020. She then co-founded the Team Research Group, which stands for Teaching and Acquiring Multilingualism and Multiliteracies, with her colleague Fanny Meunier at UC Leuven. Her research interests include fundamental applied instructed second language acquisition by multi and plurilingualism multiliteracies, including digital and corpus literacies. She has also been active in pre and in-service teacher training since 2000. Some of her current projects include a European Erasmus Plus project, strategic partnership for school education called Template, technology-mediated plurilingual activities for language teacher education. That started in 2020 and will go through 2023. And a European Cost Action Program, CA 19102, on language in the human-machine era, which sounds like the name of that project sounds super interesting, which is acting as one of the 2 Belgian members on the management committee, let's say that from 2020 to 2024. She's also supervising a number of PhD students working on, among other topics, mobile learning, differentiating instruction, learning-centered approaches, teacher-researcher collaboration in language classrooms. Her future project focuses on and awakening to languages as an open door to plurilingual critical digital citizenship. So welcome to ELT, Professor Meunier. Thank you for accepting my invitation to the podcast. And, as usual, I wanted to interview you for some time. We've been exchanging a few emails, trying to find some time and, during your busy schedule and also before Christmas. So thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you. I just waiting for Christmas in 2 days. But everything's okay. Thank you very much. And thank you for getting in touch.
Thank you very much. So, one of the first questions I usually ask people, because I look at your bio data, it's, impressive, all the projects that you've been working on. But, let's go back to the basics. How did you become interested in and involved in teaching English and, especially in linguistics in general? How was your beginning?
Okay, so the beginning was quite a few. It's quite a long time ago, but my father was born in a bilingual region of Belgium, so where French and German are spoken as the 2 languages of the area, and his mother, whom I didn't know, was a Dutch speaker. And my uncle was a German-speaking man. And although my parents are both French speakers, and French is my mother tongue, I've been used to hearing French and German around me since a very young age. And I've always been fascinated by the sound of languages and by different languages and by the fact that sometimes I didn't understand what was going on and I was trying to understand. And I don't know about teaching. My parents told me that when I was young, I taught my dolls how to read, although I couldn't read myself. So I sat them in the sofa and I told them how to do that. So basically, I love languages and I love teaching. So here we go. I went on. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's something that people have told me before, that they started teaching, I don't know, their younger brothers or sisters, or teaching dolls or I don't know, pets. So
yeah. Yes, I also did that with pets. So
very good, very good. Interesting. Yeah. Well, as you know, something that we've discussed. I know you work at UC Leuven. I did my master's in Leuven, in the other area, in the other university. I know that you specialize in corpus linguistics and DDL, data-driven learning. Then there is those names, they sound like pretty technical. How would you explain that to somebody, like corpus linguistics and data-driven learning?
Okay, so I'd say yes, I agree that they sound a bit technical and sometimes they're not very good. It's not a very good selling name, I would say, for people who don't know it, because the name corpus in linguistics might be a bit frightening. But for people who don't know much about corpus linguistics and data-driven learning, I'd say that a corpus is like a huge mass of language be it spoken language, written language, which includes all sorts of text types, registers, styles produced by all sorts of people. They can be native speaker, non-native speaker, have various levels of language proficiency. You can have language from kids to older adults. So it's really a mass of language which has been collected and organized and which is available for electronic consultation. And so you can select, do you want language from children, from adults, from speaking that language or that other language in that particular context or not? And then you can obtain numerous examples using tools. You can obtain numerous examples of, I wouldn't say any, but many linguistic features that you're interested in. And then it helps you learn more about how language is actually used in real life. And so that's why it's very interesting, and it's like a language gold mine. You find many things about the language in the corpus. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the main things is, of course, trying to look for, patterns, how to teach a vocabulary.
Yeah.
So that would be, let's say, I mean, those would be like really basic, usages of, let's say, data-driven learning. But like you said, it's a gold mine of information, in terms of, let's say, language for us. So, and let's say, something that we mentioned at the beginning, you said that Corpus Linguistics was not like, I don't know if it's, I think it's a pretty, let's say, self-evident name for people who've been working in the area. But when you talk about it, it's like when you ask students, what do you think this is? What's your experience? Like, does it sound like threatening, or does it? What do students say?
I mean, typically, as you say, it's it's a technical term, and it's an academic term which was put forward by linguists, and so it makes sense. But for people who are not specialists in the language, it might sound a bit challenging. So what I do is I usually try to use another term or to use a metaphor, and to say that the corpus is basically, you should consider the corpus as a 24/7 personal language assistant, because if you're not a native speaker of the language, you might sort of dig in the corpus and find good ways of saying this and that. And so I usually present it as a resource to empower learners and or teachers to find nice ways of putting things, or alternatives, because when you're a non-native speaker, sometimes one way of saying things, but you may want to vary when you write or speak. And so that's what I use. I say it's your 24/7 PA, your language PA, but I'm not sure it's a better term either, but it's much less technical, at least.
But I think it's a pretty good metaphor, because if you, like you say, if you would like to go maybe to improve or to to make some changes in the way you speak, you can go and search that, or if you're writing something more academic, you can also find some patterns or some transitional that can help you with that. So
or collocations as well, because sometimes we hesitate about the exact term. What is the best adjective to use with that noun? And in corpora you find many examples, so it can be very useful.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's something, that people, let's say, would say. And also, like, in the program I work, we use TV series, and we take a look at spoken language, and then we compare it. So, that would be, let's say, the personal assistant. I think it's a very good metaphor, let's say, to try to explain that. So, Professor Meunier, how did you go from, let's say, your interest in language to actually, start studying and researching corpora? How did you get there?
Okay, how I got there. So I was appointed so when I finished my master's dissertation, I was appointed by Sylviane Granger here at UC Louvain as a researcher to start the collection of the International Corpus of Learner English, which contains many, quite a lot of productions by learners of English from different mother tongue backgrounds. And I sort of started from there. And the first thing we had to do was compile a corpus. And perhaps a funny thing to say is that I was the first research assistant to get a computer in our Faculty of Arts and Letters. That was back in 1990. So it makes me feel old, but I remember that Sylviane really had to convince the dean that yes, researchers could use a computer. So
it would be a good idea.
Yeah, it would be a good idea to help us collect data, and so it started from there, and we started collecting the corpus, and then of course I started using other corpora as well. And given my interest in teaching, I quickly focused on the data-driven learning aspects. Once the corpus was collected, and that's how I started working on that.
And would you say that you were lucky enough that that maybe in that faculty people were interested in like corpora, or do you think it would have been like much more difficult to try to introduce corpus linguistics if you were like the only one trying to get a computer, or like trying to do research in that area?
I think it was something quite new for colleagues, because there were quite a few linguists around, but they were not used to working with that type of data, basically. So it took a lot of convincing to say, yes, this is useful. Today it seems a bit weird, because we have language all around us. We can have easy access to the web, to the web as a corpus, to data. I mean, when I remember the first 1 million word corpus that became available, it was like, oh wow, 1 million word. But now it seems so small. So I think it took a bit of convincing, but it was worth it. Yeah.
And why do I know that most research has been carried out in university context, and not let's say so much in school context. Why do you think that is, or why do you think that happens, that most of the research is found in level?
I think probably because initially corpora were collected by academics and by researchers in universities, and then used with students at university. And so only later on, people sort of thought that it could also be interesting for students at secondary school level, because then it gives access to more authentic data. The reason why it hasn't been used that regularly, there are several reasons. The first one perhaps is because teachers don't always have the technical support that they would need to use corpora. And although these days corpora, you have a number of online corpora which are open and accessible, you still need a bit of technical support. And so if you get the support, then probably that's going to be much easier. And also one reason, and perhaps the most important one, is that some of the types of exercises or tasks that were presented to teachers were created by researchers who were very good at corpus linguistics, who had interesting ideas, but who didn't know what real life was like in a classroom at primary or secondary school level. And so they came up with ideas, and teachers were willing to try. But when you don't have this alignment with the teacher's needs or the learner's needs, then it doesn't trickle in or trickle down, or last long. So teachers do one or two attempts and then say, okay, I've done it, let's go back to my normal curriculum. That's why I think that teacher researcher collaboration is very important, and that teachers should be also the people who design the tasks based on corpora, because they know what their learners need, they know what their own curriculum is, and they can decide whether or not it's useful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things is you need to spend some time, learning how to use the software, a little time consuming, and also, like you said, designing the tasks. And talking about, let's say, something similar, what would be the importance of corpus linguistics, let's say, and DDL for teaching English? Let's say, do you think that contributes to the students' knowledge of, grammar, vocabulary, structures, collocations?
From what I've seen so far, at least for secondary school students, even for university students, I'm what I believe, and people can disagree with me, but is that corpus linguistics is basically more acquiring strategies on where to find the info. How can I look at text and find the right info? What are the resources I can use, rather than just learning more words? So it's first of all a strategy. Where do I find the info? How should my text look like? What sort of structure can I use? And afterwards, when you use that structure, when you use the vocabulary, when you write, and when you go back to corpora to check a few things, then probably you learn the language. But initially, it's a strategy. It's a strategy, and it helps you find information about the language.
Yeah, absolutely. Students need, I mean, they start learning how to also like do some research, like linguistic research in a way. So they, in that way they understand how language works, what things, let's say, are okay, what things sound okay, and and also going beyond their linguistic intuition, when that's something.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it helps them as I see it as a tool to empower learners in terms of language use. And then, of course, they learn new grammar and they learn new words. But it's basically when they use them that they learn them. It's not so much the corpus exercise in itself. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and then that's also something that that's been part of my own teaching. When we have this idea that younger generations are using technology than us, but sometimes it depends on the type of technology.
Yeah.
So let's say when we introduce like a research tool, it can be really problematic because it's too complex compared to, I don't know, social media or or a place where you can.
Yeah. And I think what is important to tell young people is to say, don't outsource your cognition to tools, like, because some people might say, oh yes, but these days with I don't know, ChatGPT, with DeepL, with translation tools, I don't need to learn, languages. I can get the translation. I can even get the ideas, with some of the new tools. But in a way, it's outsourcing your brain, and I wouldn't, this is what frightens me when it comes to new technologies, is to say it's good, but don't outsource your thinking skills, because you will need them. And that's really important.
I think, I mean, I was also like, let's say, trying ChatGPT, and it is frightening. It's scary, to see that, it can produce like strings of language like so quickly and so coherently.
Yes, coherent and quick, and plagiarism is almost impossible to spot. So you could think it's great, and I think it can be great, but I think if you, it's really outsourcing your brain. So I don't want people to do that. I mean, it's just your human power in terms of thinking and producing ideas, because once it's gone, it's gone. If you outsource your brain too long, then it's no longer active. So
yeah, but I think that's also a very good metaphor, like outsourcing your brain, basically, because you can ask any questions, to, for example, when I was checking ChatGPT, and it can answer all the questions that you may have, but in a way it doesn't make you think, because you're everything, you're like, okay, I'm just going to ask a question. It's basically, in a way, it's like it's this very smart, like, search engine, thinking device, which is, has to be used with caution.
Yes, it really has to be used with caution. Like any technology, I think it's really good, but you should use the good. You should use the good aspects, and not trust it too quickly or too blindly.
Absolutely. Professor Meunier, what are you working at? What are you working on at the moment? Any research projects or any special project that you would like to share with us?
Yes, my current project, we've just discussed part of it when I mentioned, translation tools or emerging technologies. They have a much broader focus, and I'm not exclusively working on corpora and data-driven learning, but I'm working on the links between digital tools and language learning teaching in general. And some of the projects that I'm working on include, plurilingualism and technology-mediated plurilingualism, and also the project that you mentioned at the beginning, like a language in the human machine era. So it's really focusing on changes related to the use of artificial intelligence in technology enhanced foreign language learning, teaching, and so learning and teaching. And we analyze those technologies like chatbots or virtual reality environments, and to look at the impacts that they might have on the development of language skills and cognition, but also on language change, because and when I say we, I mean LITMA is a huge project, so the numerous countries contributing to that project. Because, for instance, we see that sometimes humans adapt their language to be understood by machines.
Yeah,
they simplify the language to make sure it can be translated unambiguously, but also all sorts of other potential threats, like, what about smaller languages or languages that are spoken, by fewer speakers? It would be a pity if such languages disappeared, because investments are only made for big languages. So that's what I'm working on at the moment, and it's fascinating. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially like the use of artificial intelligence, because many people see that, reluctantly, saying that, oh, we should be, like maybe the teaching profession, language teaching is going to disappear because of that. I don't think that let's say that's true at all. But, there are some things that we have to, let's say, really maybe integrate, and some others that can be a little bit maybe more frightening.
Yes, and also the fact that I agree with you. I think that teachers will be even more important, but perhaps what they teach is going to change in the future. So we might use the tools for some of the things that the tools are good at, but we need teachers. I mean, like critical thinking, cultural approaches. We need teachers, and more than ever, I'd say. So
absolutely, yeah. Because I mean, you can see like that artificial intelligence is not perfect. It's still, and also like there is something, if you, for example, in the case I was, let's say, using ChatGPT, my question has to be very precise, because if I'm,
exactly,
otherwise, it was not going to answer my questions. No.
And also sometimes with the tools, it's important to see, I mean, really what's available and what they're good at, and be critical with the tools, and also spot when it's not okay. And if we don't go on learning languages, we will not even be able to spot what's not okay. So we'll have to trust the machine, and that would be a pity.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is something that the machine told me was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you see any challenges, let's say, when teachers are trying to use corpora, or learning how to use corpora in the classroom, or what are some challenges?
Yes, I'd say that the challenges the challenges are I mentioned the support. I think you need support from people who can help you in terms of technical support, but also by education stakeholders. I think that you should convince people that, I mean, whether or not that it's useful, but whether or not it's useful. And it very much depends on the context, because if you have a curriculum where, metacognitive aspects are taken into account, then it makes sense, and you can justify that it's, aligned with the curriculum. If it's not at all, sort of part of the curriculum, then maybe it's more difficult to show that it makes sense. So I think we need to convince people, and also sometimes to decide whether or not it's useful. So it's not always useful, not for all cases, not always, but sometimes yes, sometimes no. But we should be very clear about when it's useful and when it's not useful.
Depending on the context, of course. And also like for just like maybe a personal opinion, would you say that corpus linguistics should be included in like teaching programs as a course? Do you think they should be?
I would I'd say yes, because I want teachers to know as many things as possible. But perhaps it wouldn't be the priority for me.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be number one on my list. So of course it should be included, but I think it's not perhaps the number one course. But when we talk about authentic data, when we talk about producing language that sounds or looks authentic, then we can refer to corpora. But I see it more as an integration at different levels rather than a course that is on the side. So it should be integrated when we talk about writing, for instance, when we talk about speaking, when we talk about some of my colleagues are working on pragmatics. So how can you be polite in such or such language? And then you can look at the differences, and corpora, a very nice tool. But to me, it should be integrated when we talk about the different skills and not seen as a technical course, basically.
Yeah, I think I work in a translation program, and we decided to include it as an elective course, and we're finishing that, but also geared towards translation studies.
It's different. Yeah,
absolutely. Professor Meunier, what advice or suggestions would you give teachers who would like to include activities based on corpus linguistics in their lessons? What's something that you would say?
So perhaps telling them that they don't have to use the term corpus linguistics. so they can do corpus linguistics without necessarily having to use the term. But the most important thing is to use the tools and the activities, and also perhaps to think first. What are the learning outcomes that I want to achieve?
Yeah.
Is the corpus interesting? Is the task in line with what I want to achieve? And not just okay, let's do some corpus linguistics, and spend 2 hours doing that, because it has to become like a routine that learners can go back to the corpus to check things, and it's not a one-off type of activity. And if it's well aligned with the learning outcomes that the teachers want to reach with their students, then I think take time, think, and then decide whether or not you need it and whether it's useful for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the main things would be like, of course, the objective. Like, why would you? It's not just like because imagine like teaching how to use a concordancer to young children or teenagers. It might be a little chaotic at the beginning. So, but then after that, they need to know. But after that, let's say they see the benefits of
Yes, they see the benefits, and then that's why I think it's something that they should do like regularly and not like a one-off type of task.
Yeah.
And also perhaps think about ways where you can, which are different, like using new technologies, which basically also rely on corpora, but which might be more interactive. You mentioned working with film excerpts, so that's the kind of thing. It's a corpus in a way. So you can use this repetition, this frequency. That's one of the greatest benefit of a corpus, is that you have access to those chunks which take a long time to acquire. If you wait for the 25th time that something is said, and you notice it and then you repeat it. So a corpus is a booster for frequency, and that's one of the greatest assets of a corpus.
Absolutely. Like you said, like maybe this chunk, but of course in context, which is you're like, oh, this is the way I've seen it, and also let's say at the Universidad de Santiago here in Chile, that's what we now students, let's say, who are graduating, we've been working with DDL in Corpus Linguistics, so they know we talk about concordancers because those were like the students who started with that, and now I think they see the benefits to create their own terminology compilation. So they see that because it's also very fast, so they've been creating their own corpora.
Yeah, and also sometimes it's also a corpus can be used by teachers to create exercises on a specific language point. It's not necessarily the pupils who need to use it. Sometimes it's only the teacher as a support tool for teaching, but sometimes you can do it with the pupils, again, depending on the needs and the learning outcomes which are envisioned. Yeah.
Absolutely. And well, we talked about a little bit of ChatGPT and artificial intelligence. In your opinion, what's the future of language teaching? I mean, if we take into account, corpora, and of course, like probably related to one of your research projects, in this technological era where, I don't want to see this as a war between, artificial intelligence and humans, but, there is something going on.
Yeah, I think it's what's important is exactly what you say. I fully agree with you. It's not to see it as a war, but to see it as what I usually tell my students is that the technology is there to support you, but you are those who decide. And it's not the technology that should guide what you do, because that's sometimes the case, because we see new technology and we think, oh, great, this is brilliant. What can the technology do? Let's do it. And that's a bias that should be fought, because I think it should be, pedagogy first. What do I want to do? How do I want to do it? And then what are the tools that I can use? And if it's better with a tool, then please use it. It would be a pity not to use it. But if you can do without the tool, well, don't use it. And and it's basically it has to remain a win-win kind of thing. You need the technology helps you, but you don't lose the control in terms of pedagogy. I mean, it should always be pedagogy first, learning first, and then what can we do with the tools?
Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, this is something, we should see, let's say, technology as a sort of, ally, but also, that, like you said, we don't have to really force technology onto our students, but, absolutely not. But we can continue teaching, language in the traditional way with textbooks and everything. But it's also, let's say, good to include, some variety, and especially tools, because there are so many tools, so many.
Yeah, there's so many. And also sometimes there's people fear, teachers, some of the teachers I know, there's this new technology, I have to learn it, and then the pressure is on learning the technology and no longer on thinking why it's useful. Or maybe you have a tool that does the same, you don't need to learn the 23 other tools that do exactly the same thing. So exactly. It's choosing wisely.
Yeah, exactly. Because otherwise you're going to be spending all your time learning.
Yes, it's impossible for humans to be as quick as the technology, but we have this thinking and creative part, and we should use it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Professor Meunier, just to finish up, what resources and alternatives can you suggest for teachers that are watching or listening to this podcast? Books, articles, these are things that of course I'm going to share on our website.
Okay, right. So perhaps for teachers who would like to see examples of data-driven learning activities that are done with younger learners, I would recommend Peter Crossway's 2019 edited volume, which is called Data-Driven Learning for the Next Generation. So it's corpora and data-driven learning for pre-tertiary learners. So I think it's a very good book because it has examples of activities that can be done with younger learners. And yes, perhaps for people interested in, we mentioned AI and emerging technologies, I might recommend a forecast report that we wrote in the framework of the LITME project. It's called The Dawn of the Human-Machine Era, a forecast of new and emerging language technologies, which is really nice. And I find it interesting because as I said, it's really, I think that there are 40 authors. So we each come with our own expertise. And something that we didn't mention is the use of technologies for inclusiveness. And I think that, it can be great, to have those text-to-speech or speech-to-text or even technologies for sign language. So we have great technologies, and perhaps that would be a first, a first read for people who want to discover the different types of technologies.
Yeah, I interviewed Peter Crosswaite a couple of months ago. So yeah,
Okay.
he shared some very interesting ideas. And yeah, I agree
Okay.
with you. I was checking, that book, and there's some there because that's also something maybe a myth, that to use corpora you need to have like a high level of language proficiency, and
Yeah,
that's
and it's not
true.
the case. Yeah, no, it's not the case. You can already do very interesting things with lower level learners, and you will find that in that book. So I think it's a good book. Yeah.
Yeah, and also yeah, bro, the project you were mentioning, like the dawn of the human machine era. I love the title. It sounds very dramatic.
Yeah, it sounds dramatic, but yeah. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you
Of
let
course,
me know if you read it. You let me know if you enjoy it. Yeah.
I'm going to read it, and also we're going to share all this, like links on our website as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
You
yeah,
know. So
thank
thank
you.
you very much. That concludes our the episode with Dr. Fanny Meunier from UC Louvain. Thank you for sharing your experiences and ideas in this episode. It was very interesting conversation.
Thank
Probably,
you.
yeah, we can also talk about in the future about like ChatGPT and artificial intelligence, because I
Yeah.
think it's going to have an effect on how we see language and how we teach language. So if you have any
Mhm.
questions or comments, you can reach us at podcast@eltinchile.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and you can visit our website www.eltinchile.com, where we share resources, and this interview is going to be online there. I don't know if you have any closing remarks, Dr. Meunier.
Yeah, I just like to wish a very happy holiday seasons to you and to yours and to all the people who will watch the podcast. So and all the best for 2023. Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, like the a year where we see the how artificial intelligence is going to be more and more prevalent in our lives, especially.
Yes, yeah. So we have to know what to expect and to beware. Yeah. Mhm.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you for your invitation.